But now let's come to our next presenter, Dmitry. He's the managing director of dxFeed. He has, as I have seen in his CV, he's an extensive experience in IT, telecommunication, and finance, which is a brilliant combination. You joined in 2016 dxFeed, and he's also holding, is it a PhD or?
Yeah, it's PhD
a PhD in physics and math, and on top an MBA. The stage is yours. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. I'm glad to meet you all here. And maybe just 2 words about dxFeed. So we are kind of 25 years on the market, and we started as a traditional market data provider, like integrating to the exchanges in the United States and Europe, having OTC venues. And so through all these years, we keep scaling our offering like vertically and horizontally. So vertically, yes, we're introducing lots of services on top of like delivering market data. So it's historical, aggregated, calculated, all the usual stuff market data vendors do. But when I'm talking about the scaling horizontally, so we need to introduce new data sources. And of course, so in the last 5 years, we like dealing more and more with crypto data on top of like traditional market data, and we keep integrating with so-called centralized crypto exchanges like Coinbase, Binance, who are quite similar in terms of the mechanics, how do they operate to traditional exchanges. But lately there are more and more talks about the decentralized finance. That's what DeFi stands for. And here we are going directly, how it's called, on-chain, right? So we don't integrate with any particular exchange, but we kind of become the participant of the data exchange, which goes on blockchain directly. And so there is a concept of decentralized exchange, which is an automatic program which basically acts as together as a matching engine and pricing. So you don't integrate and operate with some middleware. You're talking directly to a smart contract of the exchange. So, but first of all, a few talks about DeFi itself. So one of the problems discussed lately, and I think that some of you know about some crisis on the crypto market, like crash of some major traditional crypto exchanges like FTX, for example. So when you're dealing with centralized exchange, it means that you effectively allocate your funds to a particular like crypto wallet or something. So there is an intermediary party which might be at risk. And when we are talking about the decentralized finance, it's like a P2P interaction between the participants. So when you want to swap Bitcoin for, I don't know, USDT, so you don't interact with any like centralized exchange, you don't allocate your fund, you keep them on a secured wallet, and then you interact with a smart contract or a program which effectively makes this swap against a liquidity pool which is holding there. And so the DeFi's ecosystem of such applications, which we will call exchanges also in some sorts, and they can act as a direct analog of a traditional money markets, loans, digital liquidity channels. So that's more or less we get used to in traditional finance world. And so the question is, why do we need this data? So what the value can be extracted from this decentralized finance data? And so the important metric which is being monitored, so this is a volume traded on a centralized exchanges, and we want to compare it to the volume which is traded on decentralized exchanges, because if we will continue receiving data only from the taxes, it will mean that we simply like losing information about the liquidity and maybe more effective pricing which can be available on chain. And so you see that there is a figure, I doubt the statistics because there are many means how you can calculate it, but you see that the volume of decentralized exchanges in terms of volume, it can be about like maybe 15–20%, which is quite significant because the volume on a centralized exchanges volume is quite fragmented. And I know that There can be some regulatory thing as well. For example, you may be simply not allowed to trade on a Chinese exchange having a significant volume. So, and in decentralized world, everything is quite transparent. So yeah, also some more things. That volume is growing. There is about like 5 million DeFi users worldwide, and the liquidity and the volume we are talking about is calculated like tens of billions. Okay, fine. The total market of crypto is right now about 1 trillion, so you can also compare these numbers. Talking about the number of instruments and swaps, I put some statistics which we basically extract from the data which we are getting. And you see that in terms of like number of instruments, the number is surprisingly big. So if we are talking about the number of unique tokens, for example, which is trading only on Binance Smart Chain, it will be comparing to the overall number of Opera options, for example. And if you go to any traditional centralized exchange, the number of listing assets there will be like, I don't know, hundreds, maybe a few thousand. So it means that we are missing a lot of digital assets trading if we will look only on a traditional centralized exchanges liquidity. That's the very interesting slide for big players, and I want you to pay attention here. That's a research which was done comparing how good can be the price of if you execute a large volume of a traditional asset like a Bitcoin or Ethereum. And you can see that even comparing the volume of liquidity on a very big traditional exchanges like Binance, Coinbase, or Kraken. So DeFi provides much deeper like depth of the market, and your pricing can be much bigger if you're trying to execute an order on several $100,000 of a Bitcoin. So if you go for a Uniswap V3, for example, which is, I think, the biggest decentralized exchange right now, so you can get much better pricing comparing to if you go to any traditional venue. And in terms of best execution, so if you want to do it with traditional exchanges, it means that you need to allocate funds on each of them and doing some smart routing to execute your trade, while on decentralized exchanges, it will be like much easier. So when we kind of tried to enter this new universe of decentralized data, there were quite a long list of, I call it challenges. It can be just because the industry is quite immature in a few things, so it wasn't tested for like generation of people interacting with venues. And basically, there are a few things which I want to talk about. So first of all, when we integrate with a traditional venue, how it's being done. So we either like go to some infrastructure provider which provides connectivity, then we can deploy the service to a data center which is nearby, and then we simply check the documentation against the exchange protocol, develop the feed handler, and we are more or less integrated. But here it's a totally different animal, so there is no centralized point where you can connect to because it's all decentralized, and the only thing which you technically can do is introduce your own nodes to blockchain, keep them synchronized. Then you synchronize the whole information about the blockchain to keep a full history, and after that, so you can parse the particular exchange protocols information, which can be quite purely documented, unfortunately, because many of them are like supported by some enthusiasm. They can be open sourced, but in terms of like documentation and support, you will not meet much help there. Also, as the decentralized markets are free, like each of us can go and list the token on a particular exchange, deploy the liquidity and start trading. So there are no limitations in terms of listing, etc. And it explains why there are so many like digital assets on the market. So what we lack of is a lack of market data standards and the problem with reference data, because formally I can call my token as a Bitcoin, deploy it to like Ethereum network, for example, and the only difference of this asset will be, of these assets will be the difference in a long hash, which will be unique for like the token which I introduce. So in terms of reference data, when we provide the data to the client, we need to be very accurate in terms of like mapping them, data cleansing. Like, you know, that when we provide you with something called B2C to USDT, that's a right BTC. It's a Bitcoin price which you expect. And I think that the new thing is that this exchanges operate in a different way, so there is no like matching engine, there is no order book, so you simply have a liquidity and allocation of assets between in liquidity pool, and each swap is being priced based on the ratio of two assets in this liquidity pool, which is being done automatically. So what we discussed with some of our clients, that their quant teams, they need to become more familiar with this DeFi concept, because it's just new math models should be involved. So the traditional models which were effective for order book exchanges simply cannot work there. I don't think that I will go through all this diagram, but maybe some key concepts of where we start this. So as you know, there are like many blockchains right now, so maybe Ethereum, Binance Smart Chain, Polygon, Arbitrum, other names which you can be familiar of. So these are kind of independent universe of where the trading can be done and assets can be listed. So technically, if we are talking about the information which we receive, it's the transactions which are packed in blocks, then we can extract events from there. And these events can either represent a swap, which will be effectively a trade, so it can be also some change of liquidity when somebody add new liquidity to the market, which also can, you can consider it as a depth of a market for a particular asset. So, and on each blockchain, there will be different protocols, and basically for us it will be exchanges, like, I don't know, you trade US stocks, and there will be, how many, 17, 18 venues in United States where the same stocks will be traded. The same is with DeFi exchanges, so there are different protocols which basically will be the independent liquidity pools where you can trade crypto. And so the smart contract is basically the program which does all the swaps, provide pricing to maybe the matching engine, and depth of the market will be a direct thing to compare to traditional markets. So when you connect to blockchain, you need to become familiar with all with this, synchronize this, and what's the value comes in when you do all the parsing of the events and transactions. You can get the information about the swaps and distribute it either in real time or have a history of all trades for particular assets, and then everybody can do a back testing of their algorithms, compare it to the information which they got from traditional crypto exchanges. So yeah, that's a summary of what I've just talked about. I think dxFeed right now is one of few players who can introduce like a SOC 2 level infrastructure and blockchain clients in an enterprise manner, and consolidate the data coming from DeFi markets, because many players in DeFi field are quite, I can say, junior in terms of like doing market data and working with big enterprises, so there is not too much competition to choose from. That's the very basic architecture. So you connect a blockchain, you have a blockchain connector, you do some ETL, and then you can consolidate all this in a like analytical storage, and we have our own data lake for this. And basically, so there will be no orders, no quotes, but instead of it, we will have the information about the blocks, exchanges, and what is important about the swaps, and changes in liquidity pools, which will provide you with all the required pricing information, and also do some calculation of the execution if you consider DeFi trading. That's about our coverage right now. So in terms of blockchains, we have already deployed the Ethereum, BNB Smart Chain, and Polygon, and we have a list of blockchains which will be introduced in next months. So in terms of trading protocols, yes, it's all versions of Uniswap and Curve and Balancer. That's just different exchanges which keep the liquidity inside. These are simply the biggest ones. Yeah, and so talking about the key object, which is swap, sometimes it's also not as simple. So when you observe the trade on a traditional market, you know the effective price, right? So there'll be some commissions involved, so there is a cost of transaction concept, but here it becomes more and more complicated because when there is a swap, so you can pay different fees for this. It can be liquidity fee, marketing fee, or whatever fee which is introduced in a particular wallet. So smart contract of the token. So when you do all this, so you need to consolidate all this information for the swap to make our client to do an effective calculation on their side. So what will be the effective price after paying all these fees? So after we develop this methodology, I think that right now we can provide a full pricing information for the exchange of the tokens of these decentralized exchanges. The data is all consolidated. And what is important, so the nature of the data is following that we get the data from the very beginning. If you have a full version of the blockchain synchronized, it doesn't matter when you start receiving the real-time updates from blockchain, you keep a full history. That means that if you become interested in DeFi data and you want to integrate with our historical service, you will get the full history of trading in all these major blockchains which we support. What can be the applications? So, as I mentioned, we have lots of services introduced for traditional markets, and of course, we can apply all of them to decentralized data as well. So, for like trading platforms or market data terminals, there can be all types of charting, watch lists, like we can calculate volatility for some crypto derivatives, and also here is an example. There's a heat map of liquidity distribution for Uniswap v3, which also gives you some kind of visualization comparing how people visualize the full order depths for traditional markets, and it can be also updated real time. Maybe a few things about the use cases. What also is a key difference for decentralized data, that basically it's not so anonymized as the traditional market data coming from an exchange, because here when you receive the information about the swap, you basically have the information about the participants of this deal, because it shows you so where the funds came from one side, I don't know, so you exchange Ethereum to USDT, and you will know the wallet which basically exchange USDT to Ethereum. It means that having all history of trading, you can track some effective participants. You can try to identify patterns. You can find the successful players on a particular exchanges, and it's impossible for traditional decentralized markets. So you will not know who is doing the trading, but you will see that this guy with this particular wallet address is doing quite well, and he's profitable for years. I do know that there are a few firms who are doing CEX market making, and if you consolidate lots of information from different centralized exchanges, of course, all markets tend to become arbitrage free. So if there is a fair Ethereum traded on one centralized exchange and on another, so there will be lots of players trying to identify the arbitrage opportunity. Now you can do this only for centralized exchange. You need a consolidated view of crypto market. It means that you need to consolidate the CEX and DEX data, and only after this you will see if there are any arbitrage opportunities or not. Index management can be quite an interesting thing to explore, because with this additional value which you can extract from a history of trading on decentralized exchanges, this also provides you some result which you can introduce as an index, for example, and there are a few players doing this, and dxFeed also introduced some indices already showing, I don't know, the health of the matter of the market, what can be the trends. Providing liquidity, I think it's more or less the same as prime brokers do on some traditional markets, and the same can be replicated for DeFi exchanges as well. Monitor and lending protocols, yeah, some people do this, so you can simply not go into trading, but provide liquidity for lending protocols and just earn on a difference of the interest rates, for example. And also you can get all this information from the data which we collect. So, well, I think basically that's it. And so I'll be glad to answer any questions. I've tried to keep it not so technical, but taking into account that I don't know, the DeFi markets are quite new, so yeah.
Maybe just a short question regarding the use cases. So I'm seeing pretty much the front part or front office and maybe middle office part, but a bit little from back office or risk part. So is there any use cases we have already seen, for example, for risk-related functions?
Well, I can say for sure, because the most people we are like getting interest for this data are some hedge funds and prop trading firms which are just trying to enter new markets. So they said, okay, we did some exposure on centralized markets, we know how to trade crypto, and I think that their risk management process are already aligned to this, and we simply need new execution venues and we need more liquidity. What's the information you can get to us? So for us, the key challenge is to provide the DeFi data in a way which is more or less aligned to the way they receive centralized data exchanges for ease of integration on their side.
Many of these smart contracts are very bilateral, bespoke, call it that way, and not very standardized. How do you cluster that together to get many data to make good analysis out of that?
Well, sorry, I don't think I fully got the question.
Many of the smart contracts are not standardized, so they are not very similar. Have different features. If you then publish some traded prices about it, how can you useful cluster them together that someone can make analysis out of them? Because otherwise you get one price for one deal where you don't exactly know what's behind it.
Yeah, no, I get it. So you see, we don't need to analyze the smart contract of each token, right? So we more or less work with a version of exchange protocol, which is standardized for all the tokens when they interact with a trading smart contract, with a factory. So when, maybe we can go to this slide. So when I get a when we get a transaction receipt, from smart contracts of the exchange, it means that we get all the events and logs which are associated with the same transaction. And then we can extract the information about the all associated fees from these events. And we have some meta structure to store these fees in a unified manner. So yes, so when we do the ETL for a new smart contract, we need to introduce some new metadata, but the customer gets the information about the fees in a standardized ways. But yeah, we don't provide you with the raw data in some sense, but we do some standardization of the key concept, which allows them to keep a limited number of them for you to process them universally.
Centralized and decentralized exchanges? Because I see that there are a lot of more interesting, let's say, product on decentralized exchanges and how they, support this competitiveness and how it works actually, the market itself.
Well, formally, they are not connected in any sense. So there'll be common names like, I don't know, Binance is the biggest crypto exchange, but for example, Binance is controlling the most active blockchain, the Binance Smart Chain, where the trades are being done. But when we are talking about the protocols which work on a Binance Smart Chain, they have nothing to do with Binance, because two of us, we can go deploy a smart contract which will basically introduce a new exchange. And if this exchange will be filled with this new liquidity, the trading will simply go on. But when we are talking about what's common between the centralized exchanges and decentralized exchanges, the assets. So, and that's why this mapping and understanding, so what is basically traded there is important. It's just what I said. So when we talk trading Ethereum on a Binance centralized exchange, and we receive the information about the Ethereum traded on a decentralized exchanges, we need to be sure that that's the same digital asset we are talking about. So that's why this reference data cleansing and is very important, just not to get the wrong information or some fake contracts, which are also unfortunately being introduced every day. I can answer this question. When you trade an asset on a centralized exchange, so basically the transaction data is not recorded to blockchain. So how the interaction will be done? So you have 5 Ethereum tokens. You transfer them to centralized exchange. There will be one transaction of a blockchain showing that you transferred the asset from your wallet to exchange wallet. Then there will be like multiple trades happen on a centralized exchanges. There will be no traces on blockchain about this. And you will again the trace on blockchain when you retrieve the data from centralized exchange to your wallet. So it's incoming transfer and outgoing transfer. But what's happening in a centralized exchange is happening inside. And in decentralized exchanges, so every trade, every swap will be recorded because it will be a physical transfer of the assets. But what will be in common, well, we compare these two transactions when you transfer the token to a traditional exchange. There will be the hash of Ethereum token, which will be uniquely identifying the smart contract of your token. And the same will be on each swap you're doing on decentralized exchanges. And basically, this hash of Ethereum smart contract is the only unique key which uniquely identifies the asset. That's the key thing. So the naming, etc., it simply doesn't work because you can name it in any way. So I don't know, in this hash of the contract, you can consider it as IC and QC identifier, whatever standard you got used to. But that's the only way to be reliably know what we are talking about. Well, as I said, so you can always compare the hash of this smart contract to some reference ones because they are public. But, well, if we are talking about the, like, just an ordinary user who can, I don't know, not be so familiar with the concept, so just check the liquidity of the liquidity pool you're like looking for. If it's a popular asset, then the liquidity pool in decentralized exchange should contain a few millions of liquidity in USDT. Because if there are, I don't know, Ethereum and $10 of the stable coin, it's definitely fake because somebody will simply monetize the spike which will happen when you will perform a swap, just because the pricing curve is like this, and when it's a fraction of liquidity, then even a small swap can change the price drastically. So that's why these scam tokens can be introduced. And Well, basically, some of our clients, they only require the information in a following way. Like, we are interested in a decentralized liquidity, but we want to receive it for like top 100 tokens. That's enough. And we can simply do a mapping, so each token will be mapped to this to this hash of smart contract, and then we will only provide the data related to this particular smart contracts, and they will never face any fake information about the fake tokens. That's the most reliable filter we can do.
No further questions? Then thank you, Dmitry, and enjoy your lunch.